Okay, awesome. We are live. Hello, everybody. This week I'm at my parents' house and there's bad lighting inside, but I guess there's also bad lighting outside. Anyways, welcoming Austin to the stream. Hey, Austin.
Hey Annie, how's it going?
Busy Friday. Did you have a busy Friday today?
I did not. I had the opposite of a busy Friday. So kind of sounds like you're handling it for the both of us, which is good. So thank you for that.
You're the one who's going to bring the calm to the stream for the both of us.
Yeah. Hmm.
Awesome. Well, Austin is a consultant like I am. You work for Fulton Analytics, right?
Yep, that's correct.
And you guys use Power BI.
We do.
Yeah. So
Let's go.
I'm a Tableau consultant. He's a Power BI consultant. I have a question. Every time you write PBI, do you think PBJ? Like, do you think about peanut butter jellies every time you write
I,
that?
I didn't until you said it the first time, and now I will never not see that. So thank you for doing that to my head.
You're welcome. Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's I am so excited to hear about your story, how you got into data. For context, for anyone watching, Austin and I have messaged a lot, but we haven't done a face-to-face thing. So I've been saving the 20 questions for when we got on a coffee chat.
Okay.
So yeah, just tell me like, how'd you get into data? And I guess if this isn't your first role, we'll get there. Just start like how you got into it in general.
Yeah, it all sort of stemmed, I guess, right away in college. I think was just I took a very traditional route coming out of high school and went to college uh, for for data analytics, and then I went through and just sort of fell in love with it from the get go. I think if we're stemming all the way back to little Austin days, it was probably stemming from like classic like baseball stats and stuff like that, and loving sports is where my initial passion for data stems from. But in terms of like traditional, how did I get to my current role? It was really just a classic education background. Went to school for analytics. I then had a job working for doing digital analytics while I was in college, and then I went and got my master's in analytics as well right after that.
Hmm.
So it was kind of like it's just been analytics for the last 6 years of my life. It's just a very traditional route, straight textbook route. I don't have some crazy, I had a problem and I wanted to solve it in my free time, so I learned Python. It's just like I just fell into it and just took the classic route. So here we are today, and at my current position as a consultant.
Wow. So funny because every person I've talked to since I got back from New Zealand has had kind of the more traditional route into it. And every single person that I talked to before then was the opposite, who they were like me. And I imagine that you have not like scrolled through all of my bio and everything. So my background is that I'd say a year and a half ago, I didn't know what Tableau was. I didn't know what Power BI was. I didn't know what data analytics was. And then last year, like at the end of January, beginning of February, I started learning just for fun as I was finishing my master's degree in occupational therapy. And then I ended up really loving it. And then in about April, I was like, sure, I'll like try the job search thing and see what happens. Like I'm gonna give this a shot. But I still wasn't sure. I had like 20,000 followers on TikTok at that point, so I was like, a whole bunch of people might see me fail, but we'll
Yeah.
try.
Yep.
And then in the end of July last year, I got offered this job. So my entry into the data space was consulting, which I'm realizing now is a little bit unusual. I imagine you didn't start in consulting when you started.
This was my first job as well. So it was consulting right out of the gates. I mean, I had an
Oh, okay.
internship in college, which I used to work at the JC Penney headquarters. So
Hmm.
that was the most classic, typical corporate world that I have been in. But after that, it was consulting straight out of college. So all I know is consulting for right now.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious, like, if you were talking to somebody who was getting into data for the first time, would you also recommend that they like just go for it with consulting right away or start with something else?
I have been asked this a couple times in the last few months, and I have originally I used to have an answer that was more along the lines of I still think that it's a good opportunity to have that corporate background, and I still think if you're starting out, it's good to sort of be the guinea pig and the junior level analyst and do some of the things that you should do as a corporate analyst. But I've sort of since gravitated to recommending consulting to more people because I don't think a lot of people think of it as a first job. It's usually something people break into later in their careers. But what I've found is, and it's kind of an obvious answer, but just like the exposure you get at an early level is just second to none. I think that the amount of clients that I've had in different industries has made me realize so much more about business. I've learned so much about different businesses and different industries that it's just not something you would get at a typical corporate structure. So now I have pivoted my answer towards if somebody were to be starting out is actually, yeah, like look for something in consulting, because I think finding out what you don't like is just as important as figuring out what you do like. And I think consulting teaches you that pretty well. And I think
Yeah.
you very well know that the various different clients you get, um, some industries more difficult than others. The ones that you don't enjoy maybe help shape your career later on. So I think, yeah, I would recommend people looking into consulting. I would say that if you're talking classic stereotypical consulting, it could be a little bit of a grind if you're falling into that aspect of consulting, but not every firm is like that, and especially not mine. I mean, we're not like the classic 80-hour a week consultants. So
Mm.
if that were the case, then if you could fall into a position like that, I would definitely recommend doing so.
Yeah. My sister's dog is coming over here and she might stick her face in the stream. We'll see. Anyways, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. Um, I think that I would kind of like temper my answer based off of like what kind of a person they were. So if you're somebody who likes stability and, who likes to have like a really defined kind of path paved for you and very clear career progression, like you're really interested in like a job, you want to become a senior data analyst by title,
Yep.
um, which is fine, then probably, I mean, maybe at like a big consulting org, but definitely not at mine. Like there's, especially because like I work at a startup and so do you. It's kind of like this, you wear a lot of different hats, things change often and quickly. And like
Mhm.
I learn so much. Like one day I'll have a client who's like got a Salesforce connection that I've got to like piece my way through. And then the next day, like I'm doing like a MySQL connection. And then like
Mhm.
just kind of the requirements from every project shift so much. And I talk to other people who are data analysts, who are entry level data analysts. And I talk to them like, what do you do in your role? They're like, yeah, well, I do a lot of like I make the reports for this department and this department, which is like a lot of cleaning in SQL or joining in SQL or this
Mhm.
in Excel or whatever. And then it's like, well, what do you do in your role? And I'm like, I don't like every week the answer is vastly different. Like
Yep.
this week I was writing a Python script to clean data because one of my clients was sending me files that were, which I usually don't do this, by the way. Usually any edits that need to be made, I make on their side, but it was a
Mhm.
special use case that I needed to clean out one column that needed to be not a string, it needed to be like a number. And when I was unioning, if it wasn't, it would break the whole workbook. So I like wrote a
Yeah.
Python script to go into a whole folder and just like clean that. And then like last week, I was just like formatting a dashboard because I had a customer that had like a public facing one. So it was a lot of like containerizing, like making the colors match and like testing
Mhm.
the color palettes and the fonts and everything. And those are like really vastly different
Yeah.
things, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I never know what to say when people ask sort of what you do for work. I try to keep it depending on the audience, obviously, and it's not that I say that because it's not like my job is that complex or anything. It's just because I don't even know where to start half the time. So I usually just lead with some industry work or examples, maybe that might resonate with them a little bit. But you're right. I mean, one week you're doing one thing that you've maybe never done before. Or it could be completely technical in the weeds, like you said, a Python script, and then all of a sudden the next week you're trying to figure out what colors match, and you're
Yeah.
like back to grade school. So it is kind of a new world, and I just think it's so you learn so much so quickly with consulting. But you're totally right with it. It depends on the person. If you want a more maybe linear path or a more structured path, I think consulting might not be the best option depending on where you land, but um, it totally just depends on everybody's situation. But I'm very glad that I've sort of fallen into it in a way. I think it's definitely helped springboard my career more than it would have somewhere else. So very grateful that I've found consulting.
Yeah. So do you find that on your projects, are you kind of like given the data, the state that it's ready to go to make dashboards from, or are you doing like your specific role? Are you doing kind of data modeling? Are you like writing SQL to get things in, dealing with databases?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the classic answer is always going to be it depends. But I think more recently, I've been, for example, like the most recent project that I've started was less, the data was less available for me. So things like data modeling is pretty much 95% of the work for this project. So
Yeah.
that's sort of where I'm at now. But like when I started, it was more, let's pair you with somebody who can take care of the engineering, can take care of the modeling behind the scenes, and let's just prep the data for you, and you come into it and make the visuals. Um, Obviously, that's a perfect world scenario that is not realistic for every project. The data is not always just going to be readily available and taken care of for you. But uh, with Power BI, I think I don't know as much about the Tableau side of things with modeling, but with Power BI, you just sort of inherently have to know about data modeling in some regard. It's so important to a
Mm,
proper Power BI solution. So without a doubt, you have to be involved in that in some regard. So, but you mentioned like we use Power BI, so we are a Microsoft shop through and through. So we typically find ourselves, in the SQL and Power BI settings. It's not so much dealing with um, a bunch of other outside data sources like that. I mean, a lot of it is, whether it could be it could be Snowflake or it could be an Oracle database or something like that. But most of the time, it's SQL and Power BI for me.
hmm Yeah. My my company also has this tool called Mito, which is an ETL tool. And it's some of my customers, I'm very, very glad to have that because um, I don't know how Power BI does with this, but Tableau definitely has limitations like in bringing things in. Like if you want to have like 5 different data sources or they're, like even dealing with like custom objects and like Salesforce and stuff, like our platform Mito does a really good job at the kind of bringing everything together and then just giving me one spot that I connect to. Because I
Yep.
had one customer that like in Tableau, somebody else had built their workbook for them and then left their company and they had like a Google Sheets connection as well as Salesforce connections in the same data source that was feeding like the same sheets.
Yep.
And then like, but Tableau like doesn't like that. And so every time I needed to publish that or like work on an extract or something, it was like the whole thing broke. And it was like
Yeah.
10 hours of just like troubleshooting, like literally just login credentials.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and again, I don't know as much about Tableau as you do, but I do think that that's probably one area where we're going to get into it already of like where, what can Power BI do? I do think it does handle multiple data sources very well. But again, the whole idea of at least centralizing that in all of that is the same, whether you're using Power BI or Tableau or whatever. But if we wanted to start throwing punches, I don't want to get into the weeds. We don't have to do that, but I'm just saying. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to give the Power BI thing a try. I've heard that like something that I know that I love about like okay, obviously I know Tableau very well, but I can really like create art with Tableau. So for
Yeah.
customers that have a public facing dashboard or they're showing it to like really important executives or something, I know that I figured out how to almost kind of draw with Tableau. So I can essentially just like use data points to like plot things. And of course there's the Figma backgrounds and stuff, but
Yeah.
um, just the way that you can kind of do this art in Tableau. And I haven't heard anybody express anything about that for Power BI, but I think that the other side of that coin is that Tableau has Tableau Public,
Mhm.
which is totally free and it's this excellent community. So every time I go on LinkedIn, I'm seeing these like beautiful dashboards. If you go on Tableau Public, you're seeing like truly works of art.
Mhm.
And I haven't experienced that community with Power BI because they don't have like a Tableau Public, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. So myself, for any context, I am way more of a data viz person than anything. So I am very much so interested in sort of like how can we make Power BI like art in a way. And
Hmm.
I think that the community has since evolved since I've joined a couple of years back. And I think, there's tools now like we're seeing a big one that I use all the time is Navi Pro. And that's sort of just become this new library of Power BI inspirations where you can host your own, sort of like a Maven Analytics, you can host your own portfolio on there. And that's been all
Hmm.
specific to Power BI. And so I think that we're not seeing it like straight from Microsoft, whereas Tableau has like the Tableau, community of visualizations, but
Yeah.
it's these third party uh, companies that are hosting these repositories now for things like people's personal portfolios. And I think I think at the end of the day, visually speaking, out of the box, I think Tableau is just it's superior. It's hard to argue that. I also think that if percentile of both tools can do this, it's that extra tail on each end that Tableau can probably stretch and sort of skate circles around Power BI with a couple extra use cases. But I I think for the most part, you're right. The Tableau community did such a good job early on with establishing like here's where you're going to publish, and like I don't they have competitions, I think, for visual of the month or visual of the day or something like that. Like
Yeah, they
that's
do all kinds
super
of features
cool.
like that.
Yeah. So there's things like that I do wish Power BI had, but I think even now, I don't know about you, but I find myself getting a lot of visual inspiration from non BI tools with my data visualizations. It's things like Apple, specifically, as a company that I just like their interfaces, and it's seamless and it's modern, and things
Hmm.
like actual companies is where I've been getting a lot of inspiration for visualizations lately. It's not so much Power BI or Tableau. It's like major
Hmm.
companies that are just it might just be a website design or a graphic that I've seen for a marketing something. But yeah, so there's so many tools out there, but I do think I'll have to give Tableau kudos on that one for getting that started right away.
Yeah, I think too, like with getting the inspiration from different websites. Initially, when I was a data consultant slash data analyst slash person using Tableau, I I didn't have any kind of a library built up of what a dashboard actually meant because it was my
Hmm.
first time experiencing dashboards. So it was so helpful to have Tableau Public because I could just kind of scroll and be like, oh, like that is actually what a dashboard means, and like
Right.
coming up with these ideas of like where you could put things and like what kinds of charts display what kinds of information the right way. Whereas now I've kind of got that library. And so when I go into creating a project, it's not this like vague liminal space of like, what am I going to put into this project? It's like I get this vision of
Hmm.
like what I want to accomplish for the end user. And then it's just a matter of how. Something that one person had said, this one had said, what is the future of Tableau as per your opinion? And I thought that I would tack it onto this discussion.
Yeah.
I'm going to the Tableau conference like next week. Very
Mhm.
excited about it. I think that there could be good things, but also since Salesforce bought Tableau, I have been experiencing way more bugs.
Really.
Like way more bugs, and they don't get fixed as quickly. Like if Tableau releases a new version, I simply won't use the new version until they like release another new one because
Mhm.
I'm always one version back.
Yep.
Um, because like for example, this last one that just released, if I'm trying to edit on my main laptop screen, the text is all like janky. And then I'm
Mm.
like on customer calls and I'm showing them and I'm like, sorry,
Don't
I
mind
like
that.
your text doesn't actually look like that. It's just
Yeah.
like displaying, but if I move it over to my second monitor, it'll display correctly, which I actually think might be an overcorrect because in the past if I tried to edit calculated fields on my second monitor, it would break. The cursor wouldn't be in the right place. So I could, even if my Tableau was on my second monitor, I had to bring it over to my first. So just in terms of like Salesforce has laid off a bunch of people who work in the Tableau departments. They've kind of
Yep.
compartmentalized it and then started laying them off. So I think future proofing myself, not being all in on just Tableau is a good idea because I just, I mean, how often do you run into bugs in Power BI?
Honestly, not that much. I I don't have any like major glaring ones that I think of that I run into very much. I mean, I don't know what Tableau's release cycle is for the updates. I mean, Microsoft.
Quarterly. I mean,
Okay,
the big ones are
quarterlies.
quarterly.
Yeah, so I mean, the Power BI ones. I mean, they come out monthly, and there are things that I will like similar to you. I will just simply not, subscribe to the newer version because maybe there's something I don't like. I'm still a little hesitant to the on object visualizing in Power BI. Like I don't love it right now, so I just have not. Joe is spot on. I agree with him. But I think like I don't find myself like purposely not updating my application because I'm fearful of bugs. It's more so just like I'm fearful of change because I'm a human and I don't like breaking my schedule. So um, bugs, not so much, but I also think I mean, it's new. Like Salesforce, this is a new thing for them. Like it's growing pains in a way. So
hmm I didn't. So do you have a Windows computer? I didn't know that this was a thing that Power BI is not available. Is this a thing?
so this is an argument. Yes, you have brought a good one to the table, but I think it was probably I think it was the April this most recent release. We're seeing a lot more attention to updating actual reports, and now you can update things like the data model on the back end side of Power BI in Power BI service. So in the cloud in your web browser, you can make changes to those sorts of things, which is a huge plus for Mac users now because I was always the gripe was I have a Mac, I can't use this, or I have to use Boot Camp or some other virtual machine to run Power BI on my Mac, and it's always been a big problem. But I think that they have obviously, you know, Microsoft is aware of that. They're not naive to that concern. So I think now that a lot of the development can be done not in the Power BI desktop version, like not on your Windows application, but more so in the service in the cloud-based application, I think that's where you'll start seeing a lot of the Mac growth start
Mm,
coming into play a little bit more. So I wouldn't fully trust it yet. Like I'm not recommending people using Power BI and Macs, but you still need a good Windows machine right now. But that's just sort of my rebuttal to that argument, if we want to call it that.
yeah, I didn't even know. I mean, I have a Windows, but I definitely it's funny the Windows versus Mac debate. I literally didn't know it existed,
Yeah.
and then I became a
Yep.
consultant. I don't know if it's across data analytics or just at my company, but
Yep.
there's definitely two teams, and every time somebody has like a bug or a problem the other one doesn't, is like, oh, should have had a Windows,
Yep.
should have had a Mac.
Yep. And it's funny because I'm an Apple person, like through and through. Like in my life, I used to have a MacBook in college, and I had a Mac after that, and now I have iPhones, and like I just love the Apple ecosystem. I will die on the Apple hill. I just so happen to, if Apple releases a BI tool, I will be the first subscriber to that platform. But until then, I will stick with my lovely Power BI.
So on a similar note, with somebody I saw this, somebody was saying about how learning data telling as a beginner, and someone asked, oh yeah, this one. There was a comment about like community is very valuable as a beginner. So I'm curious. I imagine you weren't plugged into the Tableau public community when you started your job. So, like at your company, what was your experience? And like, you can temper this to however much you feel comfortable sharing, but like, what was your experience with like mentorship and like kind of that community of like, hey, we all love visualization. Let's get better together. Like, did you
Yeah,
experience that?
specifically at my company.
hmm
Yeah, it so for context, my company is 24, 25 people. We're a smaller firm, and I think inherently you just get a better opportunity then to learn from other people, and you have a closer bond with people. And so I would say this. I might be coming at this from a little bit of a unique lens because of that, but I felt that the community in terms of learning from one another was so heightened at my company because we were so small and because we
Mhm.
all sort of had to lean on each other. Because I think when I started, we were 13 or 14 people, maybe 15 people. So, like, at the end of the day, you were like 7% of the company in a way. And
Yeah.
so you can't really like throw your work under a rug and just get away with not knowing, you know, some elements. And so I think that when you're part of such a small organization like that, then you sort of have to lean on each other. And we sort of all just gravitated towards understanding each other's niche. So I knew that my niche was X and my coworkers was Y, and I knew that if I ever had a question on that, I could go to them and ask. And so we sort of developed this internal community of support. And I think another, it's another conversation of itself, but we are all remote as well. So we almost lean
Mhm.
into that in a way and say, okay, we're all remote. Like, we have to interact with each other somehow. We can't just hide behind a computer and not like each other. So let's lean into each other for what all of our strengths are. And so for the lack of the public community that there maybe was versus Tableau, I think the internal community uh, to my company was so strong. So, I've even got like funny coworkers right now that think it's funny that they want to shout out for this. So, like, people like Sam on my team are the ones that I would go to. Like, if I have a specific question on certain principles of Power BI, I will go to Sam for that, or I'll go to anybody else on the team. So we built a pretty strong community internally, and I just, again, I think it's unique probably from some stories I've heard at other people's companies, but again, just if you don't have that at your company, I think it would almost feel like my responsibility to create that in a way, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting to hear. I feel like maybe I came into my company experiencing like kind of at a step forward from where yours is at because mine
Mhm.
I think is like 42 employees. And I mean we have our product too, so we've got like a dev team and there's more to it than just the consultants, but it definitely sounds from the past what I've heard from the other consultants of like that they when they came on and they were new to Tableau, like it was like I figure it out or I don't, and so they would the stuff that it sounded like they used to do to like be together. Whereas when I came on, my boss had been a consultant for 5 years and then he's now like the head of he's had like four different titles since like I don't even know what his title is now, but head of the visualization team. It was initially head of the Tableau team. Um, and so his goal has been specifically to train me and then my two other coworkers who are specifically doing this. And then there's a few other consultants who do all of the SQL and all of the other crazy
Yep.
stuff in the data ecosystem. So my initial entry was like I would just most of my customers actually initially were just giving me a spreadsheet, like a spreadsheet or
Yeah.
two of their data. And it's certainly progressed from there, but so I got kind of this like cool learning environment where I had one coworker, she had come on like I think half a year before me, and then one who came on a month after me. So it really felt like we were all learning together and we would talk about, best practices in data storytelling and like the analytical flow of dashboards.
Mhm.
We had an office hours every day of the week, like except for Friday, in the afternoon. And it was so nice because, like, if we got stuck on anything, we knew, oh, I'm going to hold it off till office hours and then I'm going to bring it
Yeah.
there. And then it was cool too because then it would be like, oh, I heard you two weeks ago when I was doing my thing during office hours. I heard you guys talking about this thing. How did you solve that? Because I've hit that now in my project.
Yeah.
Now we've had to drop it down to once a week, and I'm like so sad about it because like there's sometimes it'll be like on a Thursday, and I'm like, oh, this is such a good office hours topic, but it's not again until next Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff is so important. I think as consultants, the the learning element I feel is so much more apparent with consulting than it is with a lot of other classic jobs because you're brought in to be the expert, in any situation, quote unquote. If anybody's
Mhm.
actually hiring me to be an expert in anything, they're crazy and they're wasting their money. But like, if you're brought in to have the answers, and so you have to learn from each other, and especially you and I started consulting with not having experience before that, so it's like you come in and having to know so many things that you sort of have to ping ideas off of each other and learn from each other. So I think stuff like that is great. We Very similar situation. I sort of started with another person, similar age to me, similar situation and background as me, and we just sort of learned with each other and just along the ways bounced ideas off each other. So I think stuff like that is super great, and you kind of have to be a lifelong learner to be in consulting in a way. You can't just
Yeah.
ever be content because you will be quickly passed up very, very fast.
And humbled.
And humbled. Yes, I very yes.
Another thing it's crazy to me, I'll see people like on LinkedIn who are like, "I'm offering my consulting services in Tableau." And I'm like, that is such a bold move
Yeah.
because like I look at like in Tableau, like if I have problems with like server, I know like there's one person in my company, this guy Kai, and he's like a server wizard. He knows everything about Tableau server. And I don't.
Yep.
And like if I had to do recently, I had a customer who wanted me to kind of create days that didn't exist already in the data model, which is a date spine, which requires some very specific joins. And if you don't get it right and you cross join it, you create like a billion rows of data.
Mm.
Um, so I was able to work with a senior consultant on like doing that. And the idea of especially people who have like been in the field for less time and they kind of like have gotten a handle on like how to use Tableau, or even Power BI in like kind of the drag and drop way, I want this
Mhm.
column and these rows and stuff. And then being like, I can do consulting in that. I'm like,
Yeah.
that is so bold.
Yeah, I more power to them. I really don't think I could do it. I think just yeah, I'll just leave it at that. It's a very props to them for being able to do that. I think I'll stick to being humbled at my day to day. I think I'm not quite ready for offering my services to anybody just independently. It's a lot of work for sure.
Yeah. So if tomorrow you were to unexpectedly get laid off, what would you want to do as your next thing? Would you want to keep consulting, keep data analytics, or is there another
Dang, that's a good question. Uh,
path?
I I truly think that I would probably kick myself if I didn't stay in analytics. I think that I just haven't exhausted it enough to really have that much of a drive for anything else right now. I still think just too early on to really deviate from that. So I would probably go, just right back to the drawing board and square one with analytics, and I'd stick true to my background and sort of my experiences with consulting. So I would say if the opportunity presented itself, I would stay in consulting if I had the choice. But I mean, it it's such open. You got me thinking about like so many different things. I don't have the drive to just go out and start a whole new career. I don't think I'm that type of person to just want to switch to, I don't know, anything else. I just think that
Mhm.
I still just want to use the experience that I have, and I love analytics so much, and I love being in the data space. So I don't think that I would find as much natural passion for work in a different community right now. So I think I'd probably have to stay in analytics in some realm, but whether that's consulting or working for a regular company, that'd probably be up for debate. But I just think data, I'm just too new into it to want to leave. I don't think I've fully scratched the itch of analytics yet. So maybe ask me in like 15 years and I might have like, oh yeah, I just want to go be like, I want to work at a marina and just park boats and live on a boat or something. Like maybe that would be my answer. But I right now I just don't think I could leave the data world.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I think if I were to get laid off, I'd be worried because I really like consulting and I think that the
Mhm.
type of thing that I'm interested in analytics space, that kind of intersection of like how businesses can actually make good decisions as
Yeah.
well as using the technical tools, as well as having the customer relationships is so great. But it's not as common, like if you just kind of browse the job boards, you're not like seeing like
Yeah.
consulting
Consultants.
roles all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like
that's
I know that
true.
a company like yours, like are they even going to be on LinkedIn jobs? Because if you're small, you have to pay for
Right.
that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it might be tougher unless you're shooting for, a big firm. Um, I think I'd actually probably I don't know about you, would you think about doing any teaching if the opportunity presented itself? Like at a university or high school or something like that? I think that would be something that I would probably throw out there as well if I could do any aspect of
Yeah.
teaching. I think that'd be pretty cool. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well, that's the place that I started. I was originally getting my first choice for my undergraduate major was education.
mm,
And then I realized that I liked it, but I didn't like to have to deal with all of like the procedural stuff that came dressed in that. And then actually, when I was getting my master's degree, I discovered that higher education is pretty fucked up. At
yeah,
least where in the sphere that I experienced it, it was just kind of this weird hierarchical like
yeah, that's true.
game, it felt like. And
Hmm.
you had to just kind of exist to be like subservient to the program director, even though the program director wasn't even in the field that they're talking about anymore. So like they're really
Yep.
not the expert?
Yeah. Yes, I would agree with that. I think it's a game that you'd have to tread lightly in for sure. Um, but I would maybe just use that as a part-time stepping stone, let's say, to get back into analytics. Well, I can get my feet under me and find another job. But let's
Yeah.
just hope that this we don't have to. Let's just hope that this is all conceptual. We don't have to think about that whole thing. But
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that the direction that I think it's so interesting that with like consulting, you get to see customers at this point where they're ready to make a change in the way that their data ecosystem functions, you
mhm,
know? And so you get to see like, okay, maybe they're just starting out and they're figuring out like how to have a database for the first time. Or
right,
like maybe they have a database, but they have no idea how to make any of that work for any kind of reporting. Um, And so, like, the experience that I'm getting with like the strategy of like more so than just like writing the SQL, doing the right data modeling, but like the actual business strategy of like how can I use your data to drive analytics and insights, but then also how can I make sure that that feeds back into what you're doing? Because
yeah.
I'm not your on staff data analyst. And so I'm trying to create something that is sustainable that you can keep using and you can keep understanding. And if someone else comes into your role, they can understand it too.
Yeah. No, it's super important. I think that would probably be my first response to if anybody was looking to jump from like junior analyst or junior consultant to more of a senior consultant. I think that would probably be the biggest differentiator right there is building something that's scalable and reusable and dependable versus something that just works, but that you might get a call back in a month and ask for an update or something might have broke or whatever the situation may be. But and that's sort of where I'm at in my career of like trying to think about now is like next steps. How do I take that next step professionally? And I think that's probably the first thing I think about is you're coming in and actually strategizing for companies on a solution that they should be using for a long time ahead. So thinking about scalability and how things are going to uh, change over time in their organization, like all those things have to be considered when you're building an analytics solution for somebody that you're not just the resident analyst at daily. Like if you're just going to walk away and leave the project in 8 months or whatever it is, that has to be able to live long past your time. So I don't know if you would agree with that. If that's something that you think like obviously the technical skills, there's a difference between a junior consultant and a senior consultant. Like you're just, you have more experience, you have more understanding of the tools. Um, I just think the strategy side of everything is the ultimate differentiator between a senior level and a junior level. But Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
No, I
an
agree.
interesting next step.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's like there that recently Google came out with that like Google Analytics like professional advanced or whatever certificate.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me because like I really think the essence of what separates a junior analyst from a senior analyst and someone who can just do the technical stuff to like someone who can really provide business value and overall kind of oversee the strategy of a project is that kind of unmeasurable internal stuff
Hmm.
that some people have it naturally more than others, but it just comes from doing it. And so you
Yep.
can't take a course in Python and then suddenly be like, well, now I have a senior data analyst's level of skills because I know Python.
Yep.
Yes, you might need to be able to leverage using Python, but it's like the components of like being able to think through all of those pieces. And I definitely like I keep track of like the projects that I work on and like what I've done. At the end of every week I keep like a log.
Hmm.
And it's interesting thinking back to my first projects where I was like, "Oh, you want me to build a dashboard for this? Okay, I will build a dashboard for this."
Yep.
And now they come and they say, "I want you to build a dashboard for this." And I'm like, all right, let's unpack that because I think
Yeah,
that what you're
right.
saying and what you're wanting maybe aren't the same thing and like how I can deliver on that the way that you're saying it. Oh, well,
Hmm.
I want you to build this. And then what they're actually saying is something entirely different.
Hmm. Yeah, it's consulting. I mean, obviously, the non-technical skills are so apparent in consulting as well. It's the communication. It's understanding what they're asking for. And I've never really thought about working like that. Like you just trust that they're asking for what they want, and that's the right answer. But that's also why consultants have jobs is because sometimes clients don't know the answer, and that's totally fine. And like it's our
Hmm.
job to sort of challenge that, or not just say no to everything, but just to always have a challenging perspective to a request. And I think that if we're just talking pure like data visualization, like challenging ideas of dashboards, I think is what ultimately reduces just the unused visuals, like the unused reports. We get so bogged down and just clutter and just so many ecosystems that are just swamped with dashboards. And it's because nobody ever took the time to challenge them and really ask, like, are you sure that's what you want? Is that really what's going to help us drive business here? And so it's just that extra layer of challenging communication is it's so difficult. I didn't realize that that was so much part of this job, but it very much so is, the ultimate way that you can keep yourself in scope versus having to build 15 dashboards for 15 different questions.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Like the scope is a good thing to bring up too, because a lot of clients come in and they've only seen Excel. And so then you
Yeah.
show them what a dashboard can do, and then they're like, "Oh, well, but all right, if you could do that, then like, well, why don't you have to also do that and also do that and also do that? But I also want it to be simple." And you're like, "You just took the work that you were going to do and made it go times five."
Yep. Yeah, it's always fun to see people's reactions for the first time and see their faces light up and say, "Wow, I didn't know that was possible," or "Didn't know you could do
Seeing
that."
people get to
So,
use their own data for the first time. One of my a senior consultant at my company is like I'm on his one of his projects, and he was in person with some of our clients the other day, and he said he showed them a dashboard that I had made that was like an explorer dashboard. So they have like survey data, and it's for a while, and he showed it to them, and they like for the first time were able to actually go and like explore their own survey data and like what if you put this demographic here and this demographic here and then limit it to like only these answers of this question. And
mhm,
he said they were like blown away. And I'm
yeah,
super excited to get to this was just the first iteration to kind of do this user training and like, is this view helpful for you? Like what things do you use here? Because seeing people use their own data for the first time that they really care about and they know about is like,
yeah.
it's so exciting.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It's a big part of why I like what I do so much. But you mentioned a good thing there, like just watching people interact with their data. It just tells you so much from a visual perspective of how you can enhance things, and just, I mean, watching where their mouse clicks the first time, or seeing how they like what they have difficulties doing. Like, did they maybe miss the button that you thought they would know to click on, or did they miss the hoverable, effects that you included? Like understanding like where their eyes and how their brain works is it's so important for visualization. It's not just a one and done. Like this is a first iteration. Like that should not be the final solution by any means.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. And them talking through it too,
yep.
sometimes I'll have a client say something. They'll like look at a chart. Like an example that I had a little while ago is I had like one thing that like had a couple different answers and then kind of the demographics broken out. And they had said, oh, so this demographic, like people with this demographic are more likely to say this thing. And I realized that what they were not understanding how I had broken down the colors on the bar. And
Sure.
so they were just seeing the height of the bar and mistaking that for like the answers.
Hmm.
It's kind of a vague way to put it. But basically, they were getting the dimensions confused with each
Yep.
other. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad that you said that out loud because now I'm just going to equalize those bars because the point is actually the color slicing them down, not the actual width of them.
Right. Yeah, you get so caught up sometimes, and well, I'm not saying you, but like people like get
Yeah.
so caught up in you're the one staring at the report all day, like building it, so you know what everything means, but then you pass it off to somebody for the first time, and you see how they interpret it, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that you haven't been staring at that graph for the last week and a half, and turns out you don't know that the color is what you should be looking at instead of the bar height. So it's you have to put yourself in their shoes so often.
Hmm. How about one thing I'm curious about is like with scoping, if you have a customer and you generally have kind of sold like a thing, and then it comes to it and they like want you to redo everything, or they suddenly have a new arm that they want to add on, um, like with the time that you bill and like the hours that they've purchased and stuff, do you ever end up in a situation of like, oh, I'm going to run out of hours, I'm not going to accomplish what they want, I'm kind of worried about that? Like, how does that work with your
Yeah, I
your
mean,
stuff?
you're I think inevitably it happens to every like it's going to happen at some point. I think that I'd be lying if I said no, that you're not going to like hit every project perfectly with every deliverable, because there's going to be scope creep, or there's going to something went wrong, or whatever. But I just think ultimately, like what I do in these situations, when things start getting out of hand, and again, this just comes with having a little bit more experience, but when you can identify problems before they happen, or that you can identify that scopes getting out of hand, I just think uh, I just think like creating a simple backlog is always good, and always like sharing that with them and just saying like, here are some of the things that you've maybe discussed or talked about or asked me to do that we're not going to have enough time for, and maybe we don't have enough time because this took us a little bit longer, or you didn't give me access to your data as soon as we thought you would get it to me, and stuff like that. I think if you're just communicating like what we have left to accomplish and why you are not able to finish it in the allotted amount of time, then chances are that's going to be okay. So whether it's a project extension, or whether it's an entirely new project that needs to come out of it, or maybe it's just a straight up investment of my time that I drop the ball on something that I need to invest those hours back to them, is and do uh, my 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 work for them, then you know so be it. But I just think ultimately it's, if you can start anticipating when those things are going to, if you're going to run out of hours, uh, I always, I always like try to keep a pulse check of, if I'm 40% of the way done with the project in terms of time, I should probably be pretty close to 40% of my total hours used, right? And so
Hmm.
just keeping those things in the back of your head, like consciously thinking about how much you've used, it's just pacing yourself, and always baking in a few hours that at the end, because that there's going to be some testing and validation that goes wrong, or there's going to be a random add-on request from the client, or whatever it may be, that inevitably always happens. So
Yeah.
it's communication, it's keeping a backlog, it's telling them why you might not be able to finish something. It's just being honest, like you're a consultant and they're expecting you to do the work, but that's what we're here to do. We're here to communicate, and we're here to be transparent with people. We're not here to screw people over and just take business away from them. That's not my job. So I just
Yeah.
think you have to be open about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just something that I personally have been running into on some of my projects lately. And I've been
Mhm.
curious about like how it works for you guys because I think that sometimes people come in with the expectation that they're buying a finished product instead of just like buying hours to make something happen.
Sure.
And so kind of like working that balance for myself of like, okay, but like this was, this was the scope that we had agreed on, and then
Hmm.
you doubled it, and then you wanted me to do that in the same amount of time, and like being respectful of like the customer's desires and stuff, but then
Yep.
also, do I do that as unbillable time? Um, like, do we kick that back to sales, which
Hmm.
is, depending on the size of the company, usually, and the people you're working with can be taken better or worse.
Yeah.
Um, so it's been kind of like a point of friction that I've had to figure out how to handle personally.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure I've met a consultant who doesn't have a gray area with billable versus unbillable. Do I bill it to this person? I think it's kind of one of the natures of consulting right there is just sort of how do we pace ourselves? How do the hours, pan out? But yeah, it's part of the game, I think, a little bit.
Something that I was thinking about the other day, I've been listening to this podcast. Oh, I don't know what it's called actually. I think it's like called Be Data Driven or something by Kyle Winterbottom or something.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not calling it to my mind easily, but I actually love it. And some of the
Hmm.
episodes I listened to twice. That's how much I love it. And I can't remember
Hmm.
the name of it, but I think I'm close. Anyways, he talks to like chief data officers and like head of analytics and like people who have done a really good thing, who like have written these great books, or their company has gotten awarded for having like the best data department.
Huh.
Um, and they a common theme with all of them was they were talking about how they empowered people at their company. I mean, they are chief data officers, which is kind of in scope for this role. I know it's a flexible role, but um, teaching people at their company how to use their data that are not data analysts or data scientists. And they all talk about how they empower, kind of this company-wide data literacy and
Hmm.
data-driven decision making that isn't just based on what comes out of the analysts' reports or the scientists' reports. Like, it's not this silo of data.
Hmm.
Everyone has access. And it got me thinking about like data analysts. Usually it's their job to do that. But I'm curious about like how many people who are data analysts feel that they're being able to make decisions with data in their own role. Like, do they have access to their own data, and are they feeling empowered to be the data-driven decision makers? Are they seeing data-driven decisions made about their role?
Right.
So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that with your company.
Yeah, data governance in general, and I think you alluded to sort of where I would want to go with that is breaking down the silos and increasing some transparency, because I think the companies that I've worked with that I've seen the most success in are those who are open to the idea of a basic data dictionary or some sort of centralized governance technique that allows people from the analyst level all the way up to a chief data officer or somebody like that to all be on the same page. And I think that ultimately, like, you're to your point, like, analysts, it's kind of their job to use the data and to create or make decisions with the data. But if they don't feel empowered to use it, or they don't really understand it as well as their manager or something, then I'm not sure that strategy is the most effective. But it just got me thinking about like data literacy and like governance and all these things that are just like they're so, I almost want to like call them buzzwords in a way, but they're just so important that I just feel like they don't get talked about a whole bunch. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
who just wants to have the best solution, and my team can have the best solution. I'm going to isolate that data from other teams, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't provide scalable results in any way. So, and now I've completely even forgot what your question was, and I'm just thinking and ranting about data governance, because I think the most frustrating things like that I see are just people who don't understand their data because their boss won't let them, or they've got four different
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
definitions of conversion rate, and it's like, well, why can't we just be data literate, and why can't we just talk about these things and establish ground rules and common definitions for everything? It's Why
Yeah,
can't we
and
not
some
just do
people's
that?
bosses or companies don't really want them to be able to use their own data. They don't want them to be able to access,
Hmm.
even all of their leads or their commissions. I've heard that from someone I know. She's like, yeah, my company doesn't actually blocked my access in Salesforce to be able to like just
Really?
download all of my, because I was like, I could bring your stuff into Tableau. I could show you how to use, she's my friend. I'm like, I could show you
Yeah.
how to use your own data. She's like, no, it's blocked, not able to access it, not able to
Hmm.
export it. Um,
Yeah.
so that's crazy to me, and some people don't like that. But I was curious about you. Do you have any data for your role specifically, actually your job that you're able to use,
Like
besides just how
internal
many hours
data?
you worked? Yeah, I mean, I
Oof.
don't know. Like what I don't know what KPIs would be. Like I guess one thing that if I was the head of a bunch of data
Hmm.
consultants, I would be sending out a quarterly survey about employee satisfaction. I would be tracking skills that people were using commonly in their projects. There would be so many more things than the number of hours they worked, right?
Hmm.
So like, do you have any data for your role specifically?
I don't. I have never thought about this before. It is not something I've always been so externally focused that I never I never have like thought about internally how can we use data? We call ourselves data people. We don't even use it ourselves. But no, I think that's a great idea. I mean, the like customer satisfaction survey is always a great one. I think there's probably things that you know, I don't know about because I
Well, an
didn't
employee
start the
satisfaction survey I'd also be sending out because I would care about that.
yeah. So yeah, like something like that. I think the tools used is a good one. I would almost want to be like, what are the tools that you've been using, or slash, like, what are the tools that or technologies that you want to be using or think
Mhm.
would be beneficial to add to your tool belt. So things like encouraging that continuous learning and getting feedback from your employees about like what are some things that are on the up and up that you would want to learn about. Um, so yeah, that's actually a really good idea. I hadn't thought about much of that. That's probably why I don't own my own business because I
You
don't
just
think
did a
about
little
those sorts of
rant about
things.
people not being literate about their own data, and
And
then you were like,
here I am.
"Oh, I don't have any of my own." But I
This is live too. Everybody just saw that. So that's
I had
mm,
that moment with myself that I was like, "Oh, I'm not collecting any of my own." Like I just
yeah.
started my job less than a year ago. Like, why I want to go back and look at like if I get better about with how I collect my own data. Like, um, before I was doing a lot of stuff like in spreadsheets. Like how long did
Mhm.
it take me to just make a dashboard that came right from a spreadsheet, and how much time was I spending on conceptualization and project planning versus like now, and like how much time am I spending in personal development every week learning SQL, and like is that going to change what I'm doing? Like
Yeah.
I realized I was like, oh my gosh, why am I not? I can make
I'm a
myself
f-
my whole own.
I'm a fraud. I'm a fraudulent data analyst. This is terrible. I'm not even using data for my own self. Uh, you've totally got me, and now I'm going to rethink a lot of things. But no, I think it's great. I mean, it's great to think about. Definitely something I hadn't thought about before. I'm just a fraud. What can I say?
Now you gotta think. I literally sat down with myself and I was like, if I was consulting with myself right now, what are the KPIs we would be defining? Like, how would I be?
Mhm.
It actually up to me because I was talking to my boyfriend the other day, and
Mhm.
he's always been like, well, I don't need someone to analyze my data. He's manager of the rock climbing gym. And then he was saying about the membership at his gym last month. And I was like, well, do you have any metrics related to that you can like track to see? He was like, well, we don't have a lot of data. Like, you've been open for 9 months. What do you mean you don't have a lot of data? I have
Yeah.
all kinds of things that I would be running. And then I was like,
Mhm.
ooh, I feel that way also about myself, maybe.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. 9 months is plenty enough time
Yeah. Well, wow. 1 hour. That was fast.
on the dot. Yeah.
Do you have any last parting thoughts before we log off?
I do want to just throw out, the to tie the bow on the Power BI versus Tableau. It is something that I do just encourage people to not think of as like a this versus that thing. I just think it is
Mhm.
another one of those debates that sparks a lot of conversation, and it's good to have those conversations. But I do really think it is just one of those things like a classic bell curve. Like the 68% of the things that you could do in one tool you can do in the other. 95% of the things you can do
Mm,
in one tool, the other tool probably maybe does better, but like you can still achieve the same result. And then it really is those final like 2.5%
mhm,
tails that are really the unique use cases. I really don't think of them as they're obviously, a 1-2 punch in the BI tool game. So it's nothing that I think that people should be, you know, losing sleep over, but it is a fun discussion to hear what both tools are capable of. And likewise, I think I need to get into the at least understand a little bit more about Tableau and maybe use it myself a couple times just to sort of open my eyes a little bit. But that's just I do want to throw that out there. It's not a
I
it's
agree,
not a
and I
boxing
think
match.
what we talked about with that kind of the things that bring you from an entry level to a senior level data analyst, specifically also consultant, none of those had anything to do with Power BI or Tableau.
Exactly. Yep.
Those were all actually the skills like behind driving it. And so that
Yeah.
initial learning curve of like the first maybe couple weeks that you're using a new
Yep.
tool, there'd be the differences, but those kind of skills that we've learned about like really gathering the requirements well and making sure a dashboard gets used and like using not using bars as a time series but instead lines and like how to use
Yep.
color correctly, those are all a one-to-one comparison.
Exactly. Absolutely. So no, but no, I
Thanks everybody for
very much so
coming.
appreciate you having me on. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad we finally got to do something semi face to face and have this chat. So appreciate it very much.
Yeah, this one definitely went fast. I'm sorry, comment
Yeah.
section, I kind of ignored you because I was animated.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for coming today.
Thanks, Annie. Appreciate
All
it.
right, let's see, and it's ending.